So, for those people that want to learn about blockchain tech but aren't necessarily inclined to sit down and read a lengthy article, and this one is rather lengthy, so I thought I might give the abbreviated author's version just for people that have busy schedules and want to get kind of the meat and potatoes out of it, besides pouring through all of the interview questions and follow ups from Chris Bleck, who's the DeFi watchdog that's most notable in the industry, and then with the THORChain core dev team, which is the at the present time 70th largest crypto company at about 1.3 billion after some of the losses they sustained in their market capitalization. But you can see here I just did a little opening paragraph talking about how THORChain, their inroads into or the way that they were able to stem the tide on the losses was better than a lot of projects would have been able to do, and is the reason why you see such huge losses on a lot of exchanges. So, you look at 4,000 Ethereum and 7.8 million, that's, a sizable amount, but it could have been much more based on the exploit itself. So, yeah, an 18-minute read here. So, I'm going to go into it and talk about anything that's kind of particular interest. The beginning here, I sort of set the scene for the recent nature of the attack. I mean, it just happened, 48 hours ago. It was a sizable attack that the development team knew about early and were trying to plug the dike on uh, essentially what could have amounted to a larger, more catastrophic loss of a blockchain that had, many millions of cryptocurrency value stored on it. And I did a little bit of background into THORChain. Not a lot of people know about it, but I would say the chief use case of importance is going inter-blockchain and being able to transact value across different blockchains, which is no small technical undertaking, that's for sure. And then talked a little bit about how you had a price of less than a penny to $20 in 2 years, and you have internet time, which is faster than a New York minute, and then blockchain just operates on even a more accelerated pace than that. And as a result, you have price to earnings that push three figures, 200, 300. And just to essentially show a meaningful depiction of that, let's say you're a salesperson for Coinbase making strategic partnerships and bringing that value to the company. Let's say that you just, matched in value what you're bringing um, in terms of your salary. So let's just say that, you brought in 100,000. Then at that 300 valuation, it's, 30 million. So that's extremely sizable in scope. And, one of the beauties of this type of stratospheric growth is that, yeah, you can get a real return. If you bought any time in 2018 and sold any time really in the last 2 months, you would be 2,500x up, and that's the real appeal of a seed fund or angel investors that are getting at the very nascent stage of a company. Because if you can have a batting average of 1 out of 2,500 and still be a success, then that's a much lowered stress for you in a professional capacity. And then here I talk a little bit about how THORChain is staked by the liquidity providers, and providing that underlying liquidity makes the fees low, and how essentially you're incentivized to stake your value there, in a number of different tokens. You can see here on the circle they have Bitcoin, Ethereum, Bitcoin Cash, Litecoin, Monero. I believe that's True USD or Tether. That's Tether. And then looks like Binance Smart Chain. And I think that last one on the left is uh, some sort of Z project. I'm not familiar with that one. Uh, Although I do know it has a big market cap. It's like a top 25 market cap. Not as acclimated with that particular project, but what for people that go into something like this, THORChain does a better job with some of their innovative solutions of limiting what's called impermanent loss. That when there's a difference in the value of the matching assets, so in this case it would be Bitcoin and Run, which is their token for the THORChain network, that doesn't, as long as one of them was a little bit off in terms of, and I'm talking about a little bit, like 100%, 200%, so it's big movements. As long as there was, if you put it, let's say at, one side was worth 100, the other side's worth 100, and you're only really going to see a big dip in terms of the value if you're hitting like 200%, 300%, because a lot of the actual chipping away at getting more of one token and less of another token comes kind of much later, and you're earning a lot of fees along the way for being exposed to this impermanent loss. So there's a technical understanding there and breakdown that you can click on this hyperlink and be able to read a little bit more about that. But it's fundamental to what Uniswap sort of invented. And if you're interested in that, then there's some really in-depth reads on that, and some also very good YouTube videos that I would encourage you to check out. But in this we just talk about the difference between tokens and stocks and how you can get access to a certain amount of power with a project by virtue of having a meaningful stake in a crypto project, and that the community itself, if you have a lot of people with a sizable interest in something being a success, then it's proven to be much more effective than people that are hired that are dispassionate. I mean, they're passionate to the extent that they can keep their 401k and job, but they're not really showing the enthusiasm that you're seeing as a standard entrant into a lot of these decentralized autonomous organizations where people really feel in control of their career and getting substantial value along the way. And that's really encouraging to see. And this talks a little bit about how the exploit was first found. Someone identified it in the Discord, and then talk a little bit about the psychology of why, taking some money out swiftly without a meaningful stake is the most base of human nature, but it does represent an expediency that a lot of people find attractive. So it has happened, and it very likely will continue to happen. That's why the cybersecurity professionals are as important as they are and command, the pay that they do, because if you don't have a good cybersecurity system in place, then, very often these large companies are embarrassingly having to pay off their ransom demands because their systems are completely crippled by very oftentimes some low-level basic exploits that people that are any sort of ethical hacker, as they're called, would know about on day one. And just talks a little bit about here that if you stole $1 million in gold, that's 48 pounds. It's difficult to get away, and there's also problems, but it's much more safer if you're like from a criminal's perspective using the tools of a computer. So it's no surprise that the relentlessness of a lot of the attacks happens because the economic incentives and are there, and the disincentives from a legal perspective are just not there, and it's highly skewed in that favor, which is to the benefit of criminals, and why we need technology professionals that are keeping an eye on these exploits for the foreseeable future. And this is just talking about like meaningful stakeholders have to apologize when this kind of thing happens, but it really is a standard situation for really any tech company that has any sort of assets on the internet. And there's just so many ways into computers nowadays, and being able to thwart major processes or spoof an email or spoof a phone number, and you always have to be very careful. And in the industry, the track record for scam projects is not good. And I talk a little bit about when the accountability that you're getting on an individual basis is nil, and your decision making may be skewed towards short-term gain as opposed to a long-term disciplined, um, you know, decision making when there are a bunch of eyes on you and you're thinking twice before you act out of line. And this is some of the tweets that Chris Bleck did, talking about how the guarded launch approach, which they took, was innovative at the time, helped a lot of the loss, or stem the tide of a lot of the loss, which is cool to see. And for people that don't know about Chris, he's been in the space for a while, has a considerable following, and is a good guy to go to in terms of his content. A lot of great videos and tweets and keeping up on things and doing a lot of it for the benefit of the community, in my eyes. And so he was good enough to give me an interview based on what they're doing and